filling Phillies. It's the best in town. It's filling Phillies. We use quality meats and fresh Amoroso rolls directly from Philly, where every sandwich is a work of art. You can order online or dine in. Come visit us today at all 3 locations, Uptown, the West Side, or our brand new location in downtown Albuquerque on 301 Central.
The Sports Desk is proudly presented by Car Crafters. It's like it never happened.
Car Crafters, proud supporter of Proview Sports Network.
Are you sure we're supposed to be doing this?
Don't worry, I've watched him do it 1,000 times. Come on, what's the worst that can happen?
No! Bad dog!
Hi, welcome to Car Crafters. What happened?
Don't worry, we'll make it like it never happened.
Car Crafters, it's like it never happened.
Gary Johnson has a record of independence and success. In his 8 years as New Mexico governor, our state flourished. Now politicians of both parties in D.C. are spending us into bankruptcy. As a successful businessman and governor, Gary Johnson knows how to create jobs and keep government under control. Gary Johnson's only loyalty is to you. Send a historic message to Washington by voting for an independent voice. Vote for Gary Johnson for U.S. Senate.
And welcome to the Sports Desk live here on Proview Comcast Channel 26 and on Facebook Live. And you can also see us later on YouTube. We've got you covered right here on Proview Networks. I'm Scott Galletti. Ed Nunez is out of town on vacation, so he will join us next week as it's his anniversary. So enjoying a little downtime for a change. We've got all Daniawani and the crew here. Jason Pohl in the house, and we also have Josh Brown milling around, Adam Deal. The gang's all here, and we have a very special guest right now, and he is from the Albuquerque Journal, James Yodice.
Scott?
We haven't talked to you since before the season began. Hard to believe it's already week number 9.
Yeah, 2.5 weeks, and we'll be into Selection Saturday for the playoffs, which is always an exciting time. And the great thing about this time of year is we have multiple exciting and important and terrific matchups, coming up over the next couple of weeks.
We've got a very busy show, so we're going to get right at it here as we're going to look at last week's results. Week number 8 in the books. There were a lot of good games for a change after some not so good games over the weeks, but it's starting to get a little more exciting.
Well, the matchups are getting more exciting in theory. As I'm looking at the board there, gosh, look at that. Other than the Albuquerque High game, none of those games are even, a single score game. Although,
well, I didn't say they were all good games, James.
Of course,
there was a couple.
Of course, La Cueva and El Dorado was a 19-19 game with less than 4 minutes left, so that score looks a little bit more
we'll
exciting.
talk in depth about that game, and we'll show you highlights here in a bit. Let's go to the other games on Friday, as there were a bunch. St. Pius, big win over Bernalillo. Kind of a surprise, only the 2 points for Bernalillo, but St. Pius proving to be on the rise as they're getting better as the weeks progress. You had Roswell over Piedra Vista. That was kind of intriguing.
Yeah, those are two teams ranked in the top 6 by the coaches. So I thought Piedra Vista had an outside chance to upset Roswell in that game, but Roswell continues to beat all the other good teams in Class 5A. That includes Las Lunas, that includes Belen, now it includes Piedra Vista. They get Artesia this week. So, I mean, the schedule has been pretty unrelenting for Roswell, and they keep turning aside everyone that steps up against them.
How about the Centennial Mayfield game? 13-0. Centennial continues to impress.
Yeah, Centennial's 8-0, so there are only 3 undefeated teams in 6A. I shouldn't say only 3. We still have 3 as we get into Week 9 with Centennial, La Cueva, and Cleveland, of course. And that game there, the Centennial Mayfield game, that was scoreless until the first play of the fourth quarter when there was a pick 6 by Brent Rigtrip. So those two teams played in a driving rainstorm down at the Field of Dreams, which certainly interfered with I'm sure, some schemes on both sides of the ball. That's not a terrible loss for Mayfield. You know, they've played very excellent defense for the most part all season. So to keep that Centennial team to just 1 offensive touchdown tells me a lot, even in the rain. That says a lot for Mayfield. I think that result probably is better for Mayfield on the whole psychologically than it is even for Centennial.
Let's take a look at the Saturday games from last week. There were a couple of games on Saturday, and there you go, Fort Sumner House over Texaco. Closer game than they've been used to playing all years. They've been blowing everybody out up until that game, only 24-8. And Taos over Espanola Valley. Pretty much a bunch of blowouts on Saturday.
Yeah, of course, Espanola Valley had a few kids suspended for that game after that first quarter fight with Bernalillo the previous week. Not that that would have done them much good against Taos. Taos is an excellent team, and they're going to be down here at Milne Stadium on Saturday to play St. Pius at noon at Milne, which really is sort of a district championship game in that league. So I'm very excited to see Taos this coming weekend.
All right, let's take a look at some highlights here. La Cueva, El Dorado, and I know this was a very intriguing game, James. We talked a little bit about this game, and you see, I love that. I've always seen that during the Cibola Volcano Vista game, but they always do the pink mist. And
yeah, that got everybody's attention, including mine.
And a big touchdown there to get El Dorado on the board. This was a closer game than a lot of people thought it was going to be.
Yeah, no, I don't know that I would necessarily agree with that. I think the inclination is to look at El Dorado without Gabe Smith, their quarterback, and say, well, it was going to be a La Cueva blowout. But the truth is, this rivalry is not only the best in Albuquerque, but it's just a unique rivalry. And as with most rivalry games, it's difficult to predict which way it's going to go. And Charlie Dotson is an excellent coach, and he came out with a great game plan. They just ran it right down La Cueva's throat early, got out to a 10-0 lead, didn't put too much pressure on his backup quarterback, Nick Petty. Unfortunately, as the game developed and La Cueva's defense started to sharpen a bit, they needed a little bit more from Petty, and La Cueva intercepted him 4 times, so that was a bit of an issue there for the Eagles.
And the block punt became an issue a couple of times also.
Yeah, you know, La Cueva continues to win games in which they don't seem to play great football, play good football, but a little bit mistake-prone at times, and I've seen them 4 or 5 times this year. You know, and unfortunately, this play here got called back.
I was going to say, probably the best play of the game that didn't count.
Right, they had a penalty get called back here on Kendrick Milford's pick 6, which was a great pick, a one-handed pick. He's such an athletic kid. But La Cueva's defense shut out El Dorado over the last 36 and a half minutes. So that is saying something. Even with a backup quarterback in the game, La Cueva's defense played about as well as it had, I think, the whole season if you go into that second half the other night.
So it was 19 all, and then La Cueva getting a couple of big plays in the final minute.
This is the big play right here. The 73-yarder to Nas Robertson that broke a 19-19 tie with just under 4 minutes left. And then DeAndre Williams right here on the very next possession after a 3-and-out goes right up the middle. That was sort of the insurance touchdown for La Cueva.
And then they decided to get another insurance touchdown.
Yeah, you know, I've talked to a lot of La Cueva people about this, about the reasons why they went ahead and pressed it and decided to throw for an extra touchdown. You know, I heard 3 or 4 different reasons. I'm not sure any of them I particularly like, but that's the reasoning they're using for doing it.
Look at the total yardage, and a lot of that has to do with those last drives from La Cueva, but 415 to 297.
Right, and you know what? And what that graphic does not show is the 191 yards rushing for El Dorado only included 24 in the second half. A $167 of that was in the first half, and a good chunk of that was in the first quarter. So if you look at the last 2.5, 3 quarters, El Dorado had virtually nothing going on the ground. I think they had over 135 yards just in the first quarter. So you can break that down and look at the last 3 quarters and say they had maybe, 50, 55 yards rushing over the last 3 quarters, which speaks volumes for La Cueva's defense.
Look at the stat for Dylan Summer. We talked about Gabe Smith. What does Dylan Summer mean to this team?
You know, Dylan continues to be an important piece of this offense, probably the most important piece of this offense. It was an interesting game he had the other day. He threw the ball, I thought, very poorly. He made numerous poor throws that were kind of confusing to me, but he came up with his best throw of the night at the most important time of the night, that long, beautiful pass to Robertson along the far sideline, just kind of dropped it into his hands. So for as off as Dylan was the other night, and you can see his numbers, 11 of 29. For a senior quarterback, those are not good numbers. The 4 TDs is a great number, but he did manage to make a big play when the time came, and he also had a big 70-yard run in there in the fourth quarter, which proved to be really important as well.
Take a look at another game, and that was Cleveland against Cibola. And this was all Cleveland here. And, you know, part of the reason wasn't the leg of Dorian Lewis, it was the passing of Jeff Davison.
Yeah, which I think caught a lot of us by surprise because Cleveland has not had to win with Jeff Davison's arm. He's a sophomore. He doesn't have to throw because he's had Dorian Lewis with him at his side and behind him, and hasn't had to do a lot of throwing this season. So for him to come out and throw for half a dozen touchdowns against a Cibola team that's been pretty good this year, you know, I think Jeff was over 400 yards in this game. I didn't cover this game, but I believe he was over 400.
Yeah, we have his stats at the end of the highlight.
So that was very impressive, and I think sent a little bit of a message to everybody that, hey, look, you know, we're going to be capable of doing more than just sticking the ball in Dorian Lewis's gut 25 times and relying on him. So. And as I've said, Cibola's defense has played pretty tough this year against a pretty hard schedule. I mean, they've got some close losses in there, a last-second loss to Rio Rancho, a last-second loss to Los Lunas, a competitive loss to La Cueva. So this team has been very competitive in pretty much every game until this one.
They even did a little bit of trickery, as we saw in that last play. But
yeah,
and, of course, and one of the things that we haven't really talked about, James, is their defense.
Yeah, and I wrote about that week before last, and this defense is not getting enough credit. Actually, I wrote about them after the Artesia game when they held Artesia, I think, to 14 points. They're not getting enough credit for how well they are playing, and simply for how many athletes they have on that side of the ball. Starting with Deion Hunter, their middle linebacker, the kid who's got a couple of Division I offers, who's a tremendous specimen. They've got plenty of other kids in this defense playing well and playing as a unit, and I always thought, and I frankly thought the defense might end up being the better of their 2 units before the season started, simply because Cleveland had so many underclassmen on the offensive side. I mean, Davison is an underclassman, Dorian Lewis is an underclassman, Trey Watson, their big 6'5" receiver, is an underclassman. Their best skill kids on offense are underclassmen, so I thought their defense might actually be a little ahead of their offense this year, and the defense has sort of gotten lost in all this Dorian Lewis talk this season.
Now, with the exception of watching some highlights of this game, I haven't seen this game at all in its entirety. And, you know, I was wondering if the 400-plus yard passing attack was dink and dunk. Well, we saw some deep throws, and he showed off a pretty good arm for a sophomore.
Yeah, you know, and I'd seen Cleveland twice. I saw them against Artesia, and I saw them against El Dorado. And Davison was functional. Didn't have to make too many. Didn't have to make too many big throws, big boy throws, as we refer to them, in either one of those games. So, and of course, Heath Ridenauer, as we all know, was a former quarterback himself. Lovington High School, Eastern New Mexico. He knows how to cultivate quarterbacks. He has been working with this kid for many years, going back to his Yaffle days. He had Jeff Davison in his sights, going back even before he got to Cleveland. So he has been cultivating this kid for quite a few years, and he is progressing in a way I think Heath would be thrilled with at this point. I mean, given that he still has 2.5 years left in his prep career.
13 of 19, 425 yards, 6 touchdowns on the night. Dorian Lewis, by the way, 9 carries, 98 yards. He also had about 100 yards receiving and a touchdown. So he still almost had 200 yards, but the unconventional way for him.
In a quiet night. And look at that for Davison. I mean, that's the number that stands out. 13 completions, 425 yards. You're talking about over 30 yards a completion on average. That is, I mean, that's just
I'm glad you're a mathematician.
I can do these things on the fly. So, I think that's about 32, 33 yards on average per completion. That is tremendous for that kid who I would guess, and you and I have talked about this before, I'm not sure he had 6 touchdown passes coming into this game for the whole season. And if he did, it was very close to that number. And then he goes off for 6 against Cibola. Perfectly timed as well because they got Volcano Vista coming in this week.
We will take a quick break here, and like I said, we got a very busy show. We got standings to go over today, and there's a ton of them with all the districts that we have, so we'll start doing that here in a bit. We'll do them quickly so we can get all the content in here today, but we will take a break and come right back. First, the top 10 plays of the week brought to you by Dream Style Remodeling.
Down in 10. Again, Davison drop, throws it in the end zone, and ball is caught. The flag comes in. Drop it and looking back is Davison. He's going to throw it deep again. Has a man out there. Ball's going to be caught by Vihil. Vihil's racing for the end zone. Touchdown, Cleveland.
Fade a route caught in the end zone. I'm trying to see if it's a touchdown. It is.
Watching and hearing that. Davison drops, looks, throws it out in the end zone, and there he is, Trey Watson. What a catch!
Grotto. Eddie's looking, fires a fade towards the end.
Wide open to the 50, 45, 40, foot race to the end zone, 30, 25, 20, 10, 5, touchdown. Opening play for the Rio Rancho Rams.
Slot at the left side. Play action, looking to throw. Throws it deep, has Nieto out there. Ball is caught. Nieto's off to the races. Nieto's going to score. Touchdown, Cleveland Storm.
Toss from Summer, he's going deep, and Oz Robertson says hello and goodbye.
Ten at the West Mesa 15. Run pass option again. Hand off to Zach Vihil trying to get the edge. Vihil turns it back upfield. Still drives his legs. Touchdown. Wow, what a run by Zach.
Albuquerque Computer and Electronics Recycling. It's Albuquerque's only company that's independently certified to receive and process all sorts of consumer electronics and business IT assets like computers, laptops, and cell phones. They've been around for 10 years. All the important and sensitive private information is wiped clean to DOD standards, and all materials processed in the most environment-friendly way possible. Give them a call, 505-249-9495. Recycle your end-of-life electronics today.
Hi, my name is Sam Lang, and I'm with ABQ IT. Do you have a student in need of a laptop, desktop, or cell phone? We have computers that will meet anyone's budget. Please call 505-582-6583. Every purchase made, 10% will go towards your school. At ABQ IT, we make it happen.
Well, I'm going to the frontier, walk up to the cashier, order up a root beer and a number one. Cover it with green stuff, one scoop is not enough. Find a booth is real tough, back by the Duke. Meet my family, meet my friends in the quirkiest restaurant I have ever been. All of Albuquerque's favorite spot, it's the Frontier Restaurant.
The Frontier Restaurant is a proud supporter of Proview Sports Network. Don't sacrifice quality and flavor when you're in a hurry. Golden Pride offers ribs, fried chicken, green and red chili breakfast burritos, and Frontier Cinnabons. 4 great locations, or visit us online at goldenpride@abq.com. Golden Pride Barbecue Chicken and Ribs, proud supporter of Proview Sports Network.
Get into the game with Garden Swartz Team Sales. They have everything you need, from screen printing, embroidery, and digital printing services, high school letterman jackets, and all high school and club uniforms, and individual and team apparel with the most reliable brands like Speedline, Rollins, and Wilson. And don't forget to check out the latest F7 Shut helmet. It's all at Garden Swartz Team Sales. Give them a call, 505-884-1234. Garden Swartz Team Sales.
We are live here on the Sports Desk. I'm Scott Galletti along with James Yodice of the Albuquerque Journal. Ed Nunez out of town on vacation for a couple of days. He will be back next week. We've got Aldini Awani. We got Josh Brown. We've got Jason Poole. We've got the whole crew here. Always like to give them a shout out because they're working so hard all the time. And let's get right to it, James. We got to rush through some of the stuff that we usually give a little more time to, so we get to some stuff that we haven't done so far this season, and that would be standings. So let's get right to the coaches' polls, and we'll start with 3A in the coaches' poll and go from there, and then we'll give you standings. Like I said, we'll go over some of the standings quickly because some of the districts just starting out. But Hope number 1, Robertson, Dexter, Socorro, West Las Vegas. That's your top 5. Your thoughts?
Yeah, you know, Hope has already played West Las Vegas on this list. I think a lot of us are already thinking and hoping that Hope and Robertson will run into each other at some point during the playoffs. But Dexter is the team that nobody's really talking about after Hope and Robertson. The Demons have had a superb season, and they are certainly going to be one of those teams that probably won't open the playoffs as a favorite, but are going to be dangerous all the way through.
So look at 4A now on the coaches' poll that come out on Monday. Taos number 1, Portales, Ruidoso, Lovington, St. Pius up to number 5, Bloomfield number 6. And later on in the show, James, it's hard to do because we don't have all the updated stats of all the teams, max preps otherwise. So some of the players may not be totally updated, but I found out Bloomfield had a quarterback who was averaging about 250 to 300 yards a game. Apparently he's out the last week or so because his stats are only through, I believe it was 5 or 6 games, and then they have another quarterback who's been playing. But Bloomfield, if they have that quarterback, they've been very, very tough.
Yeah, Bloomfield was down here a couple of weeks ago and gave Hope all it could want in that matchup. I think they ended up losing about 36-21, but that game was super close most of the way. So Bloomfield, coached by Bob Alcorn, who used to be Moriarty's head coach many years ago. You know, Bob is an excellent football mind. So I'm not surprised to see them doing well at all. I'll be interested to see where they get seated eventually as we get into the playoffs. And, of course, Pius there ranked 5, who was playing number 1 Taos on Saturday in that district.
Speaking of 5, let's go to 5A now on the polls. And Roswell number 1, Goddard, Artesia, Los Lunas, and Piedra Vista round out the top 5. And you and I have had this conversation, James. Roswell began the year kind of the unknown, kind of the unsung heroes, if you will, and they've continued to prove everyone wrong. Sans the first game of the year, they've been on a roll.
Yeah, they had a game by their own admission where they just sort of laid an egg against Hobbs, who's an excellent 6A team.
Right.
Hobbs is 6-1, so that is certainly not
it's
a
not
horrible
like they
loss.
lost to a bad team. Yeah.
And it was after that game. It was after that game when they came up here to play Los Lunas the next week, and they put it to Los Lunas up here, and they've been playing excellent football for the last solid month or so. And, of course, those top 3 teams are all in the same district, Roswell, Goddard, and Artesia. Goddard is now the only team that hasn't been beaten this year. I think they're 6-0-1 after they beat Piedra Vista, Santa Teresa the other night, 22-8. That was Santa Teresa's first loss.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, you've got 3 great football teams there at the top. And then if you look at the other teams there, Los Lunas at 4, Belen 7, Valley 8, Valencia 9, all 4 of those teams are in the same district as well. And that district gets underway this week with
Right.
Valley at Belen and Los Lunas playing Valencia. So that district's going to have 3 really interesting weeks of football.
And the other thing that Roswell brings to the table that you pointed out a few weeks ago after seeing them, balance.
Yeah, Ethan Valenzuela, their quarterback, good runner, decent thrower, manages the game pretty well, is a playmaker, not explosive in the way that Los Lunas' Nick Garland was before Nick got hurt a couple of weeks ago and suffered a season-ending knee injury. Justin Carrasco, their tailback, been very effective, and they've got some fine complementary weapons to those two in this offense. So I like their balance, and their defense is playing at an extremely high level. That needs to be said as well.
Let's go now to 6A. And 6A, no surprise who the top one is. That's Cleveland, followed by La Cueva, a strong number 2. Centennial still undefeated. They're number 3. El Dorado, Volcano Vista, they round out the top 5. And we'll talk about it in depth a little later on in the show, James. But Cleveland and Volcano Vista on a collision course this week.
Yeah, as I look at that poll, a couple of things stand out. Number 1, that we have 3 undefeated teams. Number 2, that El Dorado, Volcano Vista, and Hobbs are all going to be in this mix for that precious number 4 seed at this point, which would include a first week bye in the playoffs. So those 3 teams, interesting to see how those will fall out. As you said, Volcano plays Cleveland. Hobbs is playing at home this week against Centennial, which is the second best 6A matchup on the board after the Cleveland Volcano game. So, Centennial goes into Hobbs this week and wins. That district is pretty much over. You get Manzano moving up there at number 8. Their defense slowly starting to play well, coming off that shutout against Clovis last week and that tough loss the week before to La Cueva. Playing quiet football, they're running the ball well, and they're playing good defense. And even in this day and age, with so many spread offenses, if you can run the ball and play great defense, that's a good formula at any level, even in this era when so many teams on this list, for example, continue to throw it so prodigiously.
Scott Coletti along with James Yodice here on the Sports Desk. James was kind enough to join us here today. And now, I love the line in television. Due to time constraints, we're going to do this. Well, we're going to roll through these standings because there's a bunch. Because this year we're going from 3A. We used to go 4 to 6, but now a lot of the 4A teams are in 3A. So we had to add 3A. So you got Zuni, Tehachapi. They're the actually Zuni, the undefeated team in 3A District 1. Any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, unfortunately, I couldn't speak intelligently about many of these teams. I don't get a chance to see them very much.
Let's roll into District 2 then.
This district, I can tell you that district rarely makes any noise in the playoffs. I'd say whoever wins that district is going to be out in the playoffs very quickly, I would guess.
All right, let's go to District 2, and you got St. Mike's, Robertson, West Las Vegas, all the undefeated teams.
I love this district. When you talk about St. Mike's, Robertson, and West in particular, you're talking about 3 schools, all of whom who have tremendous rivalries against the other.
Right.
Obviously Robertson and West more than any others, but St. Mike's has strong ties to both of the Vegas schools. So we're going to see some excellent football between the 3 of them in head-to-head games over the next 3 weeks. I don't know if there's a favorite. I think it's still Robertson, but in this district, you never can tell.
Let's go to District 3 now. There's 5 districts in 3A, and Socorro, Hot Springs, Hatch Valley, Cobre. No games yet. Your thoughts on this district?
Yeah, Socorro, a lot of people don't know that Socorro is coached by Damian Ocampo, who is Aaron Ocampo's brother. Aaron is the former Manzano coach, currently at Centennial. So this family produces some really good, sharp football men. No surprise to see the Warriors playing well. They've been a good program with Damian for many years.
Let's go to District 4. And in District 4, again, no games played yet. Who's your favorite in this one?
Yeah, it's Dexter, clearly. I can see that Dexter and Nimi have the same record, but Dexter's quality of opponents and quality of victories much better than Nimi's. Nimi's beaten a lot of schools in the Class 2A. So that 5-2, and they got worked over by Hope a week before last. So Dexter clearly the favorite here.
Rounding out 3A, let's look at District 5. And again, no one's played in District yet, but Hope, the clear favorite, I'd say.
Oh, yeah, with all due respect to the other 3 teams on this list, Hope is going to put 50 points probably up on all 3 of these teams. And it's not.
They don't want to hear you say that,
I understand.
but you're probably right,
And
James.
it's not a criticism of them as much as it is an endorsement of how
Exactly.
well Hope has been playing this year. They're just strong on both sides of the ball, excellent special teams, ranked number 1. None of those 3 teams are equipped to give Hope even remotely a fight in the district season.
3 districts in 4A. Let's go to District 1. And again, nobody's played yet. You got 3 teams who are 4-3. Your thoughts on who's going to be the favorite in this one?
I like this district. We talked about Bloomfield a minute ago. Kirtland Central quietly has been having a good season. They beat Piedra Vista a few weeks ago. Been playing some good football. So that Kirtland Central Bloomfield game is certainly going to fascinate me. I couldn't tell you as much about Aztec, but I can tell you the nature of the rivalries between those 3, the top 3, Kirtland, Bloomfield, and Aztec, is very intense, very much like the St. Mike's, Robertson, West Las Vegas dynamic we were talking about. So you can't always project which team will end up on top. I would say Kirtland at this point would be the slight favorite, and I mean very slight.
Very slight. Let's go to District 2 and see what we got there. We got St. Pius and Taos, both 2-0. Taos 7-0. St. Pius quietly edging up. They're 4-3.
Yeah, St. Pius has played some good football.
Maybe not so quietly.
One of those 3 losses was a very close loss. And of course, Taos, as I mentioned earlier, Taos is going to be down here at noon on Saturday at Milne to play St. Pius. The other 4 teams on this list are just in an entirely different class from those 2. Bernalillo's got the nice record, but Bernalillo's schedule has not been terribly demanding. So Taos coming off a win at Grants a couple of weeks ago, 20-19. They went out to Grants and beat them week before last. So this game certainly fascinates me. Derek Rivera, St. Pius' quarterback, who had to replace Diego Pavia, who transferred. He's been playing some very good football for this team, running the ball, throwing the ball, and he's one of those quarterbacks we hardly haven't talked about at all, but is playing extremely well, more than just a game manager. He's given them plays in both passing and running.
District 3, final district in 4A. Again, no games played yet. Ruidoso, the defending state champions, well, they've been kind of hot and cold, but they're still 5-2 overall.
Yeah, Ruidoso, one of those losses I think was to Robertson in overtime.
Right.
And that was on the road in Las Vegas. So Ruidoso, I think, is clearly the favorite here. Moriarty's still in a bit of a rebuild. I saw Portales play St. Pius a couple of weeks ago. That's a team that certainly will be competitive. Lovington, hard to say. They've played a very tough schedule, as they tend to do against teams like Hobbs and Goddard and Artesia. So their record probably not indicative of how well or how well equipped they are to win this district. I would still say it's Ruidoso, but I think both Lovington and Portales will challenge here.
Let's roll through 5A now. There are 5 districts. Piedra Vista, Farmington in the same district. You got Highland, Miamura. Piedra Vista, they have to be the favorites, even though 4-3, a little deceiving.
Clear favorites. I don't think there's any issue here. They lost their quarterback early in the season. They've had to fight through that. Their defense has played supremely well most of the season. Highland and Miamura struggling. Farmington actually has had a bit of a struggle, too. I think so long as Piedra Vista doesn't stumble against Farmington again in one of those rivalry games like we talked about with La Cueva and El Dorado, this should be Piedra Vista's district, no question.
District 2, Los Alamos, Santa Fe, Capital, Del Norte. This looks like it could be anyone's district.
Boy, you never can tell. Los Alamos has had a couple of games where they've played very well. So they certainly are the favorite, but I'll be honest with you, it would not surprise me to see any one of the 4 teams pop up and win this district, just because this has traditionally never been a strong league of football, and usually the team that prevails is usually a very average team that comes out like as a low double-digit seed in the playoffs. So even a team like Del Norte with that record, conceivably, they could win 3 games in this district. It would be tough, but they could do it.
Moving ahead, let's go to District 3. Santa Teresa, 6-1. And you've got Silver competing in 4A. We remembered that from the first time that we had you on before the season began.
Yeah, Santa Teresa's coming off that first loss. And, they lost 22-8 to Goddard the other night in a rainstorm. It rained in southern New Mexico heavily the other night, so they had to play that game in a rainstorm. I actually thought Santa Teresa acquitted itself pretty well. They're not in Goddard's class, but you know what? They went out and showed some fight and played competitively into the second half. So that was enough to convince me that they should handle this district no problem. Silver, like I said, we talked about them. I mean, this is a 4A team in a 5A district. There's no reason to think they can play with Santa Teresa, but they don't have to. They're looking to qualify in a different classification.
Right. Let's go to District 4 now in 5A, and this is going to be a fun one. Artesia, Goddard, Roswell, Alamogordo. Alamogordo may be the odd team out, but the other three teams, I think anybody can beat anybody on a certain day.
Yeah, I totally,
this year.
I totally agree with you. Alamogordo just snapped a 17-game losing streak a couple of weeks ago, which was nice. Artesia, I've seen Artesia and I've seen Roswell. I've not seen Goddard. Artesia supposedly getting back its quarterback, I think Trent Taylor.
And that'll make a huge difference.
Which will definitely make a huge difference. But, boy, the separation between those top three teams.
Not that Hodling's been playing bad. It's just Trent Taylor was supposed to be a very good quarterback coming into the season.
Right, and I saw him in their scrimmage against La Cueva, and clearly he brings a different dynamic to that team. So the margin between those top three teams is so slim, there's no way you can affix a favorite label to any of those three teams. Artesia gets to open at home against Roswell, which is always good because Bulldog Bowl is maybe the only
There's going to be a few fans at that game, too.
Yeah, Bulldog Bowl is the only true legitimate home field advantage in New Mexico high school football. So, which means they almost certainly will have to play on the road at Goddard, I would guess. So, boy, the head-to-head games between those three should be sensational.
Let's go to the final district here, and this is going to be a very interesting one, and we talked about this at the beginning of the year. Valencia, Valley, Las Lunas, and Belen. And how about Valencia off to that 5-2 start?
Actually, that's 6-1 now, since Rio Grande forfeited that game.
That's right. They
since
forfeited.
Rio Grande forfeited that game
I didn't
to
account
Valencia,
the forfeit, so it's 6-1. You're
that
right.
is actually 6-1. It hasn't been adjusted on the Max Prep standing site, but that is actually
which is where I get these from. So.
That's actually a 6-1 record now.
Wow.
And Valencia, I think, only won 4 games combined in the 3 years before Wes Shank showed up to coach this team. Now, having said that, Valencia is still, I think, the 4th best team in this district.
Mm-hmm.
That's not to say they won't do well. That's just my impression. Valley has a tough road game at Belen this week. So the Vikings, this move down from 6A to 5A, here is now where I think we're finally going to see whether...
I was just going to say the same thing. We're going to see if this was the right move.
Right, to see whether this is the proper fit for them. We're going to have 3 weeks of tough head-to-head games. Las Lunas, of course, is going to have to go through the rest of the season with their backup quarterback, Cade Benavides, I believe is his name, not a mobile quarterback, can throw the ball. And they still have great weapons in the passing game, so let's not forget that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to write Las Lunas off. We're going to have a lot of great football for the next 3 weeks between these 4 teams.
Rolling through 6A now, you got Cleveland, Volcano Vista, Rio Rancho, Cibola. The Cibola Cougars 0-2. West Mason, Atrisco also 0-2, but you got 3 teams at 2-0, and you got 2 teams that are 2-0 going head-to-head this week.
Yeah, and I've said I was in the minority when the season started, and our good buddy Adam Deal, who's floating around the studio here somewhere, sort of raised his eyebrows at me like, what are you thinking? And then a couple of weeks ago he says, okay, I have to admit you were right about Volcano Vista, which was very heartening to hear Adam admit that. I can see him off to the side here. You've got Volcano Vista with that tremendous team speed.
Adam's going to have a retort on his show.
That's
right?
okay. Hey, I don't have a show, so I have to get in my licks while I'm here. So Volcano Vista has been getting much better quarterback play from Jake Deathridge. And I like what I've seen from him as he's progressed from the start of the year to where we are now. But having said that, Volcano's going to have to play not just their best football, but maybe even get a break or 2 from Cleveland to win this game. Cleveland is playing sensational. That was a tremendous win over Cibola. I thought that game was going to be much closer than it was. So going on the road at Cleveland, and of course Volcano Vista is going to have to play Cleveland and Rio Rancho both on the road, which stinks for them. So Volcano Vista is going to have to put together a big game if they want to have a chance at this upset this week.
District 2, and that's La Cueva 2-0, Manzano 1-1 along with Clovis, and you've got El Dorado at Ophir, although they could have pulled out a win.
Yeah, and El Dorado
could have, but that was a close game.
El Dorado's got a road game at Clovis this week. I believe they haven't won in Leon Williams Stadium in Clovis. Charlie Dotson told me this. I think he said 1990 was the last time an El Dorado football team won down there. Now, having said that, even with this backup quarterback, Nick Petty, if they can run the ball the way they did in the first half against La Cueva, they should be okay. But this is far from a slam dunk for El Dorado. So I think this is an urgent game for El Dorado. If it still wants to have a chance to be a top 4 seed at the end, absolute must win for them. And La Cueva's on their bye week.
Finally, District 3, very interesting indeed, as Hobbs 3-0. Centennial up to 4-0, and they are 8-0 overall. But you got Mayfield waiting in the wings as they're 2-1, although they did lose last weekend. Carlsbad, Las Cruces. It's interesting to see them down to 3-4 and 1-2.
Yeah, Las Cruces is going to have to keep winning. At this point, they are not a slam dunk to get into the playoff field. So they're sitting in 5th place, and you're talking about only 12 teams going to state.
Right.
So Cruces is lingering around this bubble right now. So they're going to have to get busy in the last 3 weeks, and they're going to have to win at least 2, maybe even all 3 of these games to lock up a playoff bid. As we talked about, Centennial and Hobbs are playing this weekend in Hobbs, which ought to be a tremendous matchup.
Break time, and we will come back with more here live on the Sports Desk.
Sadie's is a proud supporter of New Mexico high school sports and athletics, and we here at Proview Networks would like to thank Sadie's for their continued support in helping us bring you all of your New Mexico high school sports coverage.
This is Coach Borrego of the Charlotte Hornets. Hello to all you parents out there in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I want to congratulate 38 years for the AYBL. You guys are doing a great job. You've shaped a lot of lives, young men and women, and you'll continue to do that. Parents, get involved, sign your kid up. It's a great program. It helped shape who I am today, helped shape me as a basketball player, as a coach. So get out there, sign them up. Have a great season. Good luck to everybody.
It's hard for a child to learn when they're hungry or being abused at home. Let's stop blaming teachers for problems they didn't create. I'm Steve Pierce. My mom loved teaching, but now Santa Fe asks teachers to be truant officers or social workers. Let our teachers teach, fix our broken test system, and put more money into classrooms. Good teachers don't give up on their kids. As governor, I will not give up on our teachers.
Brian Colon will make a great auditor.
Brian grew up pretty poor, so as auditor, protecting our tax dollars will be important to him.
Brian is the only candidate with a background in finance and law.
So he has what it takes to fight waste, fraud, and abuse as auditor.
Brian invests in New Mexico by mentoring hundreds of young people.
Brian will invest in education and expand opportunities for future generations.
So how do we know, as auditor, Brian Colon will invest in New Mexico? Because he's invested in all of us.
Thanks, Brian!
Brian Colon, Democrat for auditor.
Here on the Sports Desk, Scott Galletti, joined by the Albuquerque Journal's own James Yodice. We've got the crew here. Alden Iowani, our fine director, keeping him busy today with a lot of graphics, and we'll get right to that now as we got more stuff to look ahead to, James, as this week is going to be another busy week. Hard to believe it's week 9 already.
Yeah, we're going to have the playoff selections on November 3rd, and I mean, as we do this, it's October 16th as we're talking, so just 2.5 weeks till, a little over 2.5 weeks to selection Saturday, which is an exciting time for all of us. I know, I'll be doing my projections, you'll be doing yours. Adam just came in during the break and said he's going to be doing his, so we'll all be interested to see how our top 12 in each of the classes sort of pan out.
Rio Rancho at Frisco on Friday. It's Volcano Vista, Cleveland, Del Norte at Capital.
And we should back up actually even to Thursday night there, that Rio Grande Albuquerque High game. Rio Grande, with that forfeit that they recently inherited because of an ineligible player, they are now at 45 losses in a row. This is most definitely a game they can win. Now, they play Shiprock the final week of the year, a game they definitely will win. But don't sleep on it. I may even pop out to Millie on Thursday and take a peek in the second half. Rio Grande has a pretty fair chance to end this losing streak for the second time this year.
Right.
In this matchup there with Albuquerque High. And of course, those two have a very colorful past between them.
More games coming up on Friday. And you see El Dorado at Clovis. You already talked about that. James. Farmington at Highland. That should be very interesting. Manzano, Sandia. Sandia having a rough stretch so far this year. Valley Berlin That will be very interesting, as will Valencia Las Lunas.
Yeah, you're talking about two city rivals. Although Valencia and Las Lunas are so far apart, it's almost hard to believe they're actually in the same city. With Las Lunas coming off a 3-week break, they inadvertently had a schedule problem, so they ended up with 2 straight bye weeks. So they haven't played since late September. So you're talking about a 20 or 21-day break between games for Las Lunas. Now, the good news is that means they've had a couple of weeks to work with Cade Benavidez, their new quarterback, get him into the offense, maybe create some special looks and packages for him. So I would be interested to see that game in terms of how well that offense shapes up as they play Valencia.
Other games coming up this week, and the other Friday games, Miramira and Piedra Vista. At Piedra Vista, Roswell, Artesia. That's going to be a good one.
Yeah, pretty much all those games there at the top of the page strike me as interesting, including Santa Teresa's game. Roswell, Artesia, we talked about Centennial Hobbs, we talked about St. Mike's having to go play West Las Vegas, who's had an excellent season. So lots, and then the St. Pius and Taos game there on noon on Saturday. So some key swing games in all of these districts this coming weekend.
A lot of games that we could have talked about this week, but we're going to talk about one in general, Volcano Vista at Cleveland. And you mentioned Artesia being a tough place to play. I'd say Cleveland's pretty tough as well. Maybe not in the same regard, but it's getting there.
Cleveland is a tough place to play simply because they're so great every year, which you could say the same about Artesia, but if you're talking about true stadium environments, I would not put Cleveland on this list. I wouldn't even put Cleveland in the top 20 on my list, to be honest with you. But, you know, Coach Heath Ridenauer has put together another great team. And as I said, all these top skill kids are underclassmen. This team was really built more to excel in 2019.
Right.
And here is this group at 7-0 and playing excellent football on both sides of the ball. Trey Watson is an interesting mention. He caught 3 touchdown passes the other night from Davison. This is a big 6'5" sophomore. This is the kid who almost led Cleveland to the state basketball title almost single-handedly last March against Atrisco Heritage. So that offense just had, and there are other kids not even on this list like Colton Madison, like Randy Nieto. Offense has tremendous weapons. As we go to the other side, you see Deathridge there for Volcano Vista, 13 touchdowns versus 4 picks. The last time I saw him, he played superb football, and he's going to need to play at an incredible level on Friday. Having said that, Cleveland's defense has not seen, I don't think, a team with as much offensive speed at the skill positions as Volcano Vista. Those guys in open space are an issue. That's all there is to say. Blaine Grant, Joe Flores, those 2 kids are as fast as any 2 skill position kids here in the metro area. So those 2 have the capability to be big play producers, and they're going to have to be this week because you got to assume Cleveland's going to put up a hefty number of points. So that Volcano offense had better keep pace.
Take a look now, and there's a disclaimer because not all of the top performers are listed, but let's look at top performers. Starts with the quarterback, and Andres Lucero, part of the reason why Valencia has been successful.
Yeah, and I remember Coach Schenk, when I visited with him back in August, he was very high on this kid, very high on this whole team, but he thought he had a quarterback that could run this offense and deliver the ball to his skill kids. And look at those numbers, 21 versus 5 picks. That's pretty solid at any level, and those are good numbers. For a team that is starting over with a new coach, a new philosophy, a new complicated offensive system, they are picking that up extremely well. You usually wouldn't see this until maybe year 2 or even year 3, but it's clear these Valencia kids are picking it up quickly and implementing it very well so far.
Not sure what the story is, but I put Gonzalez in from Bloomfield because he's got 1,584, and that's only in 5 games. He had a 400-plus yard game and a 300-plus yard game and a bunch of 250-plus games.
Yeah, as we talked about earlier with Coach Alcorn, he has a special gift for recognizing the talent he has and sort of massaging his system to fit the talent that he has. At Moriarty, he didn't necessarily have kids that could throw it. He was more of a running guy. Now he's found a quarterback at Bloomfield where he can open things up. So that's what I like about Bob. He's able to adjust to what he's got, to his personnel packages. The name that strikes me on this list, at least for this week, is the kid from Hobbs, Greeno. With his numbers, he's coming in replacing a kid who threw for I think, almost 5,000 yards last year. So,
and he's getting better and throwing for more yards each and every week, I've noticed, because he's starting to stockpile them now.
And that might be the best quarterback matchup of the weekend with Lance Frost from Centennial. So you got two quarterbacks playing at a high level. Those 9 picks give me a little bit of a pause, which tells me...
A lot of those were early, though.
I understand, and that's good, but Hobbs is stepping up in competition this week quite a bit.
Right.
So I would want to see how this kid performs in this particular game this week, given that Hobbs has a chance to take the lead in the district and fight for a top 4 seed. If they beat Centennial this week and close out the season, there's no reason to think that team couldn't have a first-round bye when the time comes.
Rolling along, let's go to the running backs now, and you'll recognize a few names. Because I knew you were coming, James, I put it up there, Dorian Lewis, because there's no stats on anybody from Cleveland on Max Preps. Obviously he's a top rusher. Also, I think you know the number right now going into this week.
Yeah, he's about 1,250 yards for the season. He injured his right leg week before last, didn't play much in the game against Trisco Heritage. Of course, they didn't necessarily need him, but he came back and, as we talked about, had almost 200 combined yards receiving and rushing last week. He's just been far and away the best player in 6A, or the best offensive player in 6A this year. I think we'd all agree on that. Diego Casillas, who's from Belen, actually, they're having a big year by mortal standards, but he's still way off the pace he set from last year when he had a more veteran offensive line. And teams, of course, are keen on Diego. They know what kind of weapon he is. He's a big boy. He can be a bowling ball of a running back when he gets moving forward. So it's not a surprise to see his numbers trail off a bit with a new offensive line and whatnot. DeAndre Williams continues to be...
And again, his are only up. They haven't been updated yet as of this week, so his are 7-game totals.
Yeah, DeAndre continues to be a very good weapon. Those numbers probably closer to about 1150 now after the El Dorado game last week. And then, of course, Xavier Ivisod, who had an excellent game. He had about $140 the other night against Clovis. So some excellent backs on this list. And Xavier in particular at the bottom of that list, they're going to feed him a lot over the last 3 weeks of the season as they try and finish second place in that district behind La Cueva. They've got a big game against El Dorado next week. So you can expect Xavier to get a ton of carries this week against Sandia and certainly next week against El Dorado.
Volleyball polls we'll go through quickly. 3A we will start with. Wide receivers. Thank you, Alden. We didn't do the wide receivers yet. Robbie Jaramillo of Valencia, 54 receptions, over 1,000 yards.
Yeah, that is a big wide receiver for Valencia, and Coach Schenk spoke glowingly about him in the preseason and said that kid was going to be maybe their most dynamic kid on offense. So I'm not surprised to see those numbers. 15 touchdowns for a high school receiver, that is a big number. And we still have 3 district games left. So I'm not surprised. I believe Robbie's a kid that's over 6 feet. Not as big as maybe the Conroe O'Toole kid from La Cueva, but very athletic, a little smaller, probably a little quicker, a little bit able to run a variety of routes for that team.
I think on the one that you pointed out, the incorrect school. I know I changed this one, but it didn't save. Antonio Padilla is from Robertson, so I don't know what's up with my computer. I did make the switch, but it obviously didn't change on this end. So
and look at those numbers.
Robertson.
Yeah, look at those numbers. 21 catches for 733. I mean, you're talking that's over 30. That's well over 30 yards.
And that's missing a game.
Yeah, that's well over 30 yards a catch. So that's a kid that can stretch the field. I don't even have to see this kid to know what kind of receiver that is.
So now let's look at the volleyball polls, and I know you're familiar with some of these schools, in Robertson, St. Mike's, Santa Fe Indian, Tularosa, and Navajo Prep. They round out the top 5 in 3A.
Yeah, and of course Sandia Prep's been the dominant force in that classification for a couple of years, but they graduated some key kids off last year, so this year's state tournament, which is coming up in about a month, is certainly going to be more wide open than usual with some other teams in the mix.
4A volleyball pool. And on top is St. Pius, pretty much the top spot all season long. You got Artesia, Hope Christian. They've been kind of jostling back and forth at 2 and 3. This week it's Artesia's turn. You got Powake and Goddard rounding out the top 5.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure Hope played St. Pius earlier in the year, and I believe St. Pius beat them in 4 sets. St. Pius is one of those teams that continually plays 5A and 6A schools in an effort to, toughen them up for the state tournament format. Artesia's had an excellent program for many years, as has Pewaukee, to be honest with you. So St. Pius might be the top seed here, but I would argue that any one of these top 4, maybe 5 schools, if after pool play the brackets fall the right way, could end up on top in this division.
You just said something that makes it even more confusing if you said it. You said they play 6A schools. There's no longer 6A.
Oh, you know
on
what?
this
There you
level,
go. See, I'm still getting used to that.
I know, so am
My
I.
apologies.
So,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no,
I forget. Football has 6. Volleyball, soccer, the other ones
Right.
only have a 5A, so my apologies. Larger schools in the 5A classification.
No, but I knew right where you were going. I do that all the time, too, I'm surprised that you did.
I'm worried about doing this, in basketball, too, when we only have a 5A classification. But St. Pius puts together a very tough schedule. They have an option other schools do not in terms of playing tough local schools. None of these other teams, except for Hope, really have that option. So you have to like St. Pius, but as I said, I think any one of those top 5 teams could be a factor at state.
Let's go to 5A real quick, and number 1 in 5A, La Cueva's still there, Sandia, Las Cruces, Rio Rancho, Piedra Vista. They round out the top 5. You always have a scary Centennial team at number 6.
Yeah, and I've seen all the local teams on this list except for Volcano Vista, and I'll be covering a match of theirs next week, I believe, against Cibola. I've seen La Cueva, I've seen Sandia, I've seen Rio Rancho, and I saw Cibola in the Metro tournament. La Cueva has the best group of hitters, so I'm not surprised to see that they're on top. They've got Sydney McIntosh, that sophomore, who's just a phenomenal talent, but she's got 2 or 3 other hitters around her. Bree Mortensen, a fantastic setter. So I like this poll. Keith Leopold at Cruces, been an excellent coach for so many years, a great guy. Toby Manzanares at Rio Rancho has got his best team, I think, in the last several years, since about 2014 or 2015. So, and Centennial, as you said, with Coach Al Rosen, that team is always a threat. So I think we have a lot of diversity there on that list, and I think we're going to see some interesting matches into the state tournament.
When Ed Nunez is here, we would go over this a little more in depth, but very, very quickly, as we're running out of time, we'll look at the graphic of last week's Lobo game. What a heartbreaking loss, 20-18. Total yardage a little deceiving, 423 to 299. I don't know if you got a chance to see the game at all.
No, I didn't, unfortunately. Even though UNM is my alma mater, I do not get a chance to watch them much. This was a game, if they could have stolen this one on the road, a game where they, I think, were a 1-point favorite. If they could have stolen this one, might still have been in the hunt for maybe a bowl bid with a couple of things falling their way, but this was a loss I don't think they could have afforded to have if they had hoped to get into a bowl situation. I think now they're in a very tough spot.
Yeah, speaking of tough spot, coming up this week, they're playing Fresno State. It's a home game on Saturday evening at 5:30. Fresno State 5-1, 2-0 in the Mountain West. And you look at 2 teams averaging over 38 points. Fresno right at 38, the Lobos 38.2. But look at the against, 31 for the Lobos, just 13.5 for Fresno State.
And Lobo fans will always have a soft spot in a bad way for Fresno State. The longtime Lobo fans know this. I mean, going back to the 94-17 win that Fresno put on UNM many, many years ago. But honestly, and I'm one of those people, I've always had a certain, dislike for Fresno since that day. And I think a lot of longtime Lobo fans probably would just love to see UNM come in and just upset Fresno.
And the Lobos 14-point underdogs as of yesterday. Well, James, I want to thank you so much for coming in. We'll have to do this again
anytime
down the road.
Enjoyed
and
it.
Especially as selection time comes up, we'll definitely have you on again.
Definitely. And I hope Adam Deal and I are still friends. I know I needled him. I expect him to get back at me in some way, shape, or form.
Oh, you know that's coming. He's good at that. So that's why I don't say nothing about Adam, because I know if I do, he'll get back to it. So, all right. He's James Yodice of the Albuquerque Journal. Alden Iowani doing a great job as our director. Until next week, we'll talk to you. I'm Scott Galletti for the Sports Desk.